resistance, burnout, procrastination, sleepless nights, stress, and painful hard work. Fatigued from running on the high achiever hamster wheel? This is the Bold Leadership Revolution, where we develop high-performing leaders to live, thrive, and lead bold and smart, not hard. Here is Tara Newman and co-host Joe Gifford.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of the Bold Leadership Revolution podcast. And we're here today to talk about establishing know, like, and trust like a bold leader. And we have my amazing co-host today, Joe Gifford, with us.
Hey guys. Hi, Tara.
All right. So I think the agenda for today's podcast kind of looks like this. I want to talk about what know, like, and trust is, why it's important. I want to call out something that I think is missing when people have the conversation around know, like, and trust. And then Joe and I are going to give some tips, but from our own perspective. And when you hear what my call out is, you'll start to understand why we're going to come at this from two different places. Mm-hmm. So, Joe, what is know, like, and trust?
So when I think of this, I think of it through the lens of someone who is creating content and is adding value as a brand, as a personal brand, right? So I work with people who are building a business, are building a personal brand, and we would establish a know, like, and trust factor as being understanding what that brand or person is about. Why do we like them? Why do we trust them? So, when I think about this, I think about it as being, okay, here's my expertise. Here's who I am as a person. Here's how you can resonate with me by pulling out our areas of expertise, approach, experience, and personality. That's where I come at it from. But I want to ask you, well, what does that mean as a leader? Because is it the same thing? I have a question around that.
Right. So I want to add, the why. So for the purpose of marketing and selling product or services, right? We establish know, like, and trust. And the point of establishing know, like, and trust is because we want the people who we are leading or building in our community or building as customers or clients or members to be able to connect with us so they trust us enough to and like us enough to purchase our products and services, because people buy from people. Right. Now, this also applies to leaders within organizations, because sometimes we have people listening to the podcast that don't run a small business or something, and they're leading in somebody else's business. And this is equally as important to them, because everything we do, even if you're not in somebody's business, maybe you're leading at home, maybe you're a mom and you work from home and you're leading your team of your family. And we're always marketing and selling something, right? So you might be marketing an idea. We might be marketing a project. We might be marketing a service or a product. And so a great example of this comes up for me when I was still working in a corporate setting, and I was in organizational development and human resources. And I came in one day and I said to my team of probably 6 or 7 at the time, I said, "What do we do here? What do we do?" Someone tell me what we do. And someone said, "Well, we hire people." And someone said, "We fire people." And someone says, "And we train people," right? And I'm like, wrong. We market and sell our ideas.
Right.
Because we can't hire the right person unless we've presented them in such a way that the hiring manager will buy them. We can't terminate a non-performing employee unless we have marketed the idea and convinced somebody and influenced somebody to trust that this is the right thing to do in this moment. We can't, this came up all the time in learning and development, because how do you get people to classes or to consume this training when they're not even taking lunch? Why is this important to them?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why do they need that thing that we're offering? Why should they come? So when my trainers used to get all sad faced because people might not show up for a training session, it's like, well, how did you market it?
Yeah.
How did you build know, like, and trust around what we're doing and around the topic and really get them inspired to come? So this is really applicable. This is a conversation that's applicable to people who are not just business owners, but it is wildly applicable, right, to those of us who are business owners.
And I also want to just apply that as well, because when you laid it out right there and explained that it applies for us as small business owners, which I, would consider myself as being, as, people in corporate leading teams, which I've done in the past, as a mum as well, right? So I have a specific example. So I have twin girls who are 8 years old, Eva and Mia.
Yes, you do.
I do, my awesome minis, right? And Mia is a fussy eater, right? So I have to lead with getting her to eat, some whole foods, some healthy foods. So I did this the other day, which is only just now occurred to me, is building the know, like, and trust factor with her. So I was cooking butternut squash, the chickpeas, and coconut milk curry, which usually she would veto with that's not happening, right? So I built the know, like, and trust factor with her by involving her in the process. I got her involved. We chopped the vegetables together. She saw from the ground up what was going in it. We had a conversation. We were hanging out together. It wasn't just me enforcing her to do something that she didn't want to do. And as a result of that, she tried some curry and she enjoyed some curry. She didn't fully buy into the whole thing. It wasn't 100% a success, conversion rate. But here is a situation which I can see as managing that micro team. I managed to establish, that I'm not the baddie in the situation. I'm someone who's on her side. I'm having conversations with her around why we're eating this, why it's important, what we need to eat in our day. And she was part of the process with me.
Exactly, 100%. And so I have to ask you, do you eat curry?
I do.
Okay. So here's the piece that I think people aren't talking about when we talk about know, like, and trust, right? So know, like, and trust comes down to building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how you build know, like, and trust as a bold leader. You have to know, like, and trust yourself first.
Oh, juicy.
All right. This is that whole concept that we talked about in episode 2 around leading from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And we will link up episode 2 in the show notes in case maybe you're joining us late and haven't heard that episode. And this is what people are missing. If you can't be connected deeply to yourself, how can you connect deeply to others? If you can't be intimate with yourself, how can you be intimate with others? If you don't know, like, and trust yourself, how can you expect others to know, like, and trust you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Joe and I are going to come at this, we're going to talk about know, we're going to talk about like, and we're going to talk about trust. I'm going to talk about it from an internal leading from the inside out perspective. And Joe is going to talk about it from a branding, marketing, more practical perspective. How's that sound, Joe?
That sounds awesome. Let's do it.
Because let's be fair, we did not plan this.
Hey,
we are on the cuff and on the fly right now. We're riffing.
I have a coffee and I'm good to go.
I'm out of coffee because if I had a second one right now, that might terrify our listeners.
And blow those adrenals.
So, all right, Joe, how do you build know?
How do you build
How
know?
do you get people to know you? And I also want to call everybody back to an example. And I want to call Joe back to this example that we spoke about in an earlier episode. And I'm not going to know the episode number, where we're sharing how Joe and I got to know each other. And it was one of the big connections for me to knowing Joe was when she sent out an email sharing with people the importance of your USP, which Joe will tell you about, and how she demonstrated her USP in this email.
So when it comes to building know as a personal brand or a brand, and this is about connecting people with the core values of you. And I'm using you here as if you're a larger brand, it's the brand. If you're a personal brand, it's you. And it's such a great example, which Tara does talk about in the episode where we discuss how we met. And this goes across the board with clients that I work with. They know me, they resonate with me, they work with me, and it goes through that journey of reading something that I've written or listening to my podcast and having an opt-in, of being in my circle, perhaps buying like a lower end product and consuming all that stuff. And the know comes from resonating with the way that I present my take on things. So my lens on creating content with creative thinking, on small business ownership, my lens on that is my come from, right? That's my take on things. That's the Joe Gifford viewpoint. And it will either repel or attract. You either think, well, she's, what the hell is she on about? This makes no sense. She's being too personal. I can't deal with it. Or you'll think, okay, she's showing us how she lives her life. I kind of really get an insight of Jo, of all the ups and downs, and I connect with it, and you get to know me. So I talk about my twins, my family, how it is to sort of build a business around health issues, around having a young family, around sort of business growth as an entrepreneur. I share that stuff. I share it through my lens, and I kind of amp it up with all the quirks, all the bits of my personality that make me unique. And this is something which I really, dig into with my clients and my audience, is to reconnect every single one of them, because everyone listening has a unique blend of your experience, approach, expertise, and personality. No one has that exact set of training, of job experience, of life experience, of stories in your life that you have. And when you come at it through that lens, that is how you can really establish a strong connection with people. So now when someone emails me, they might kind of email me and say, hey, Jo, I've been on your list for like 3 years and I loved what you said about such and such and such and such. I may have never had a conversation with that person in my life, but they have been part of my world. They've been watching my Facebook lives, maybe watching some videos. So I am establishing the know factor through having a conversation with content.
Okay. Conversation with content. And you also started this out with something really important, and you were talking about your values, what you stand for, right?
Right. I come at it through the Jo Gifford lens of, I'm a little bit vulnerable in the way that I share. That's not for everybody, but my value is around honesty. It's around sharing what people would find really useful, that they can connect with me where they're at right now. I'm quite personal in what I share. I'm really happy to kind of talk about my struggles. I'm really happy to talk about, the ups and the downs of motherhood, of entrepreneurship, of all that stuff. Okay. So I've decided for myself, what I'm happy sharing. I've kind of ring fenced some boundaries. Obviously that for me, I've decided not to go the full hog and share every minute of my day. That's not where I'm at, but I'm happy to talk about stuff which will relate to people that I would love to work with. And for them, it's the stuff around juggling your family and work, around creating a personal brand, around working smarter, around all of that stuff. So I talk about my values. I talk about my point of view in a way that is really consistent, that is in line with who I am as a person. And this is really important. I know we're going to come on to this soon. There's integrity there, right? So I'm not projecting this image of me being anybody else other than I am. And I heard that in Take a Breath, Tara Newman. You may speak.
Right. So I think Jo really teed that up to me pretty well, because the whole time she's speaking, I'm thinking congruence. Right? Like we need to be in congruence here. And that's what I mean when I say you have to know yourself. So these things that you're putting out there to establish have to be truly embodied by you. So when you are sharing your values and you say, here are my business values and here is how I lead from these values, they actually have to be your values. They can't be the values that somebody else is talking about because you think they're better than you, or you think that they have more business than you, or they're further along than you. This isn't something that can be copied. This has to be something that's deep from with inside you. This is the time to really connect to your why, right? And a large part of my why is rescuing high achievers from the hamster wheel and really helping people leave the grind behind and come to a place of maybe a healthier, more sustainable hustle. And so I can't be out there grinding it into the ground.
Like on the burnout hamster wheel talking about something.
You can't give tips about how to avoid burnout when you've got your head up your ass and you're charging forward, like, full steam ahead, and you're pushing through everything and you're burning the candle at both ends and you're not truly caring for yourself. That energy is not going to carry. It's going to be really confusing. It's going to be incongruent.
And here's the thing, when you are congruent with yourself, when you are in integrity with who you are, we'll be coming to this soon, but you attract the right people to work with you who are completely aligned with what you do and how you work. So for example, the way that I work is that I do meetings by Skype or Zoom. I work with clients across the globe. It works fantastically well. Sometimes calls with me covered sort of covered in glitter like it was last week for one of my groups, because I got home from my morning rave and I was still covered in glitter. They were like, that's totally cool. We love this. This is Jo Gifford. She's creative. She's been to her morning rave and now we're on a call. If I had been attracting the wrong kind of clients by showing myself as being somebody much more straight-laced, maybe, somebody with a completely different set of values and come from, I would have appeared completely unprofessional. I would have a very different reaction and we would be working with extremely different people. But because I show up with an authenticity that is me, that is the way that I live my life, and they already know that because they've experienced me online, in person. And that's the other thing as well. Establishing no means showing up to situations as you, whether that's online or offline, so you don't adopt a persona that is so far removed from who you are that when people start working with you, there's a disconnect.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to having a process or a system for getting to know who you are. Right? Because if you can't get to know yourself, how can you expect to get to know anybody else? Right? And we're more than just our businesses. We are more than just our careers. We are multi-dimensional, multi-purpose, multi-passionate human beings. And so for me, when it comes to establishing no with myself, how am I carving out the time to have deep and intimate conversations with me? Right? Like, where's my 15 minutes of quiet time each day? When am I journaling? Because that's what journaling is to me. It's an opportunity to have a deep conversation with myself. How am I processing the events of the day? How am I letting them inform who I am?
Yeah.
If I have kids, and that's a part of you knowing me, am I talking about them? Am I sharing them with you? And it's funny because early in my career, I struggled. I can look back and say I struggled with this because I wanted to be one way. I wanted to be all business. I wanted to come in. I wanted to do my work. I wanted to meet my objectives. I wanted to crush it. I wanted to be rewarded, and I wanted to go home. And that didn't leave any opportunity for me to, one, get to know any other part of myself, hobbies, interests. These are some of the things you said you talked about. What really were my values other than this one track mind of achieving the goal, doing the tasks? And people around me really didn't get a chance to know me at all. And you know what then happened? They didn't like me very much. Right?
Yeah, but also,
because they couldn't connect with me because not everybody is like you. Humans are radically diverse and different. And so how do you get people, and that seems a little weird, how do you get people to like you, right? But it's like, how are you in relationship with people where they actually enjoy you?
And also,
we don't like you, where they feel invited into your life and they want to share that experience with you as another human being. Like, how are you a thoughtful human being that people want to be around? Because that's the like piece for me.
It is. And I think it's also knowing who you want to spend your precious time with, knowing who your people are and attracting them into your life. Because, with that whole example of you being on that track, Tara, and I know there's, I was certainly like that for a long time in my life when I was younger. And, I know we all know people who are still in that zone because there's literally no room there to even get to know yourself, to even allow yourself to like yourself. So of course you aren't going to have people like you because you don't even like yourself enough to give yourself the gift of half an hour a day to do something for you, of, discovering who you are. And the like factor as a person, as a leader and a business owner is not about, hey, please like me, I'm really needy over here. It's not like that. It's about attracting the right people into your world. And when I think back to, years ago when I was first self-employed and was still running my design business, it was starting to feel really incongruent to me because number one, design is my zone of excellence and not my zone of genius, but also my values had changed. I was now a mum. I was now someone who valued family time, who valued guarding my energy and looking after my family over, sort of trips to London and trips kind of spending more time networking and with clients that was required in that industry. So I needed to shift the way that I was working to fit with my values. And until I made that shift, I therefore wasn't showing up in a way that was really congruent for my clients because, it wasn't fitting with my values anymore. And, to them, I looked like I wasn't professional because I was working in a different mode. I wanted to establish a different way of working. It was no longer aligned with me. And when you, show up to people and as a fully aligned version of yourself, like I said, you can have those calls with the ideal clients all dressed in glitter and they get it, or whatever that equivalent is for you. You can show up as you, be accepted, be liked, and be trusted.
Yeah. Like is all about that building relationships piece and looking at what it takes to really be generous in building relationships with other people and the intention behind the relationships that you're building. So many people go into building a relationship because they want to get something out of the relationship. And that's really not the best energy to be giving toward building relationships. Like you want to go into building a relationship with somebody thinking, how can I serve this person? How can I make a difference in this person's life? How can I make this person's life better? And the only way you can build that relationship with somebody else is to be in relationship with yourself. So what that looks like for us, if we're kind of turning this inward, is more of the whole get to know yourself. It's also being really mindful around how you speak to yourself. Are you speaking to yourself the way you would speak to others? How much of your time is spent on negative self-talk? And is that how you would speak to that person who you're building a relationship with to establish this like factor? So if you're hypercritical of yourself, if you're always judging yourself, if you're doing the negative self-talk, if it's never good enough, how much do you really like yourself? Let's be honest here. And I think that because people are then going to go, but how do I do this, Tara? How do I like myself more? How do I do the self-love thing that everybody's talking about, right? And I want to just make it really simple right now for you and say, tune in, be aware of the conversations that you're having with yourself. You can scale it. I love scaling questions as a benchmark for where you are. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being I'm totally and utterly in love with myself. How much do you love yourself right now? How much do you like yourself right now? And give yourself a number and just sit with that. That's enough. So many times, because then my high achievers are going to go, now what? Now what do I do? What do I do next? What do I do next? What's the next step? Just do that. It's okay. It's a podcast. This is like a 40-minute conversation that we're having here.
That's a bite-sized chunk.
Let's start with that.
And what I was going to say, Tara, as well, is that, sometimes you don't realize that that's happening until you just have that sense of unease. And, I remember having this recently. I was like, I just feel off. I don't feel right. And then, I was a bit unhappy, a bit grumpy, a bit snappy, a bit meh. And it's only when I stopped for a minute and was like, why is that happening? That I listened to my inner dialogue and realized that, oh my God, I have been giving myself such a hard time. And when I just tuned back into that, it's like, okay, well, that's why, Joe, you've been berating yourself every second of the day, with that chatter in your mind. And I just had to tune back into that mindfulness of looking at what I'm actually saying, what is happening in my mind. And I've been rereading the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself at the moment, which is a brilliant one about self-talk. It's a really old one, but it's brilliant.
I've never heard of that one.
There we go. Add that one to your book library. It's fantastic. And it just reminds us the value of self-talk and affirming in the now what you do and who you are and what you stand for, because your subconscious needs to just re-believe it. I mean, that's a whole other subject, but if you're thinking, well, how do I know if I'm talking badly to myself? It might be the first instance might be that you're feeling off. You feel a bit crappy. You can't work out why. Just take a second and notice whether you've been giving yourself all the shoulds, all the comparisonitis in your head, like the all day long beration, which I know that lots of the overachievers out there will recognize.
Yeah. I want to also say that, we can all do a better job here. We can all do a better job loving ourselves. And Joe gave a great book example, one that I haven't even heard of, and I'll throw one in here and we'll pop them into the show notes. But my favorite one on this topic is You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Oh, yes. I love that.
That was my Bible for so many years. I just mastered that book, just kept going back to it year after year after year and reading it over and over and over again. And that's really how you create transformation, is through mastery. So if you do pick up a book on this topic, either the one that I recommended or Joe recommended, or you find one for yourself, don't just read it for the information. Come back to it and really allow it to be something that you master. Now, let's talk about trust.
Let's go there.
This one is a tough one because most of us, I've struggled with self-trust and with trust in general. I watch my clients struggle with it. Usually it's the first thing that comes up as early as the sales call.
Right.
Because some of the apprehension in doing any kind of coaching comes around the person on the call not trusting themselves to show up to get the result from the experience, from the coaching, from the training program, or what have you. This one really is epidemic. Epidemic. So, and this one comes from within. It's really hard to build trust with other people when you are a distrusting person.
Right.
When you don't trust yourself, when you don't trust the world or the universe, and you think that it's a distrustful place, that you believe that people don't keep their word, that they don't walk the talk. So this one's really rooted in some belief systems. And if we're looking at this from the inside out, this comes down to really honoring your commitments, respecting your own boundaries, and how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? This is coming from a place of personal integrity. Joe's letting that one sink in.
I was just thinking, sorry, that was it's nice dead air there for us. But I was thinking about that because I remember noticing that about myself earlier on this year, in fact. And I think I joked with you because you'd said that to me, Tara, sort of how we do one thing is how we do everything. And I said, yeah, always late and kind of unorganized. Do you remember me saying that to you? Right? It was like literally I was showing up to every call with you and with clients, like a little bit late, a little bit unorganized, a little bit. And I was like, wow, that says a lot. Like, what is that about? Let's look at that. That what am I setting myself as an example? I'm not leading in my own life in that instance. And I think about that every day. It'll be something as small as, sort of rushing around to get the kids ready for school and leaving something out. And I'm like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Let's slow down. Let's pick that up. Let's get ourselves sorted. And I'll be making time for myself. I'll be feeding myself great food, making sure I've got rest, like setting myself as a priority. And, it really rang a bell for me those months ago when we had that conversation, because I was like, oh my God, that is such a mirror on how I do everything. Obviously, I'm awesome, and it was just a little blip, but that's a constant practice, right? To be aware of how you do things, and if you are feeling like you're scrabbling, if you are feeling like you're always on catch up, if you are feeling like there's never enough time, wow, like look at that. Look at where, that's applying in many areas of your life. And, when you can establish that for yourself, people will see you in the way that you showcase yourself to the world.
Yeah. And when you're building this in your brand, right, Joe? So do what you say you're going to do.
Oh my gosh. Right.
Yes. Like do it when you say you're going to do it.
Do it when you say you're going to do it. And also, especially in the online space, right? So for those of you who are perhaps not in the online space so much, it will apply in a slightly different framework. But I think about several instances that, I know I've experienced, a projection of a brand or a person, and then beneath that is so not how it is, right? And so whether you're, projecting yourself in a meeting, with your team, or whether you're projecting yourself to your leaders or however you are, you will lose that trust if you are projecting one thing and turning up as another.
Yeah, listen, in the world of social media, it affects everybody. If you go in for a job interview and you haven't really sanitized your social media accounts, and then someone goes and looks you up on social media and you're half drunk, half naked, dancing on a bar table.
I mean, that's a standard Tuesday for me.
and you're applying for a position of responsibility. They may not trust you after seeing that. They may go, like, is she going to get wild at the holiday party? Is this how she's going to be when we send her off on travel? You know, is she going to show up in the morning because, you know, she was out partying late one night? And so it starts, you know, you start to people make assumptions, right? And those assumptions lead to somebody maybe not trusting you so much.
And you also see it a lot where, you know, maybe people are, you know, like we said earlier, perhaps they're kind of insecure. They're not trusting themselves, right, with their knowledge and their expertise. And so they try on the brand and language of other people thinking, hey, that seems to be working over here. You know, this person's saying X, Y, Z, you know, or X, Y, Z, if you would say. I'm going to, you know, try that on and appropriate some of that language. And the distrust occurs when you engage with that person. You're like, hang on a minute, this is, you know, you're talking about one thing and that's, you know, you don't actually seem that knowledgeable in it. Like, what's happening here? There's a disconnect. So it comes back again to that congruence. If you trust yourself and your knowledge and where you're at and your expertise and your personality, and you know that, you know, what you contribute to a conversation or a role or a business has value, then you will be trusted for that.
Yeah. The word that I'm hearing there is credibility.
Credibility. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly that. That is absolutely the one. Nailed it, Newman. And I'm high-fiving you. It's credibility. And credibility comes from that authentic place of, not authentic in a whimsical way, right? I'm talking about the authenticity, integrity of owning your knowledge and your contribution to how you show up in the world. And not, you know, mistrusting yourself and kind of thinking, oh, but I'm not as good as so-and-so and I don't really, because, you know, that will cause disconnect everywhere. So it starts from within, as we said. And if you can look at what you do, look at what you bring, look at how you bring the noise in whatever you're doing, people will resonate with you. They'll trust you because you also deliver. How you do one thing is how you do everything. You also show up and deliver as you have projected.
Correct. Excellent. So I want to wrap us up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap and give you some points on how you can establish know, like, and trust like a bold leader, in parentheses, from the inside out. So know comes from those pieces that are deep within us. They come from our why. They come from in what we believe. They come from our values and our vision. That's where that know piece comes from. Like comes from liking yourself, right? Like that how much are you spending time? How much time are you spending cultivating a relationship with yourself, cultivating some self-love, watching the language in which you use to speak to yourself, and creating awareness around your relationship with yourself. If every day you get up and you look in the mirror and you go, oh my God, I'm so fat. I hate my chin. My eyes are so puffy. We need to check in.
Maybe rent my house in the morning, Tara.
You know what? That was a habit that I had that I broke in 2016. And it was a really bad habit of waking up every morning and immediately starting in with myself the second the alarm clock went. Why didn't you sleep later? Why didn't you get up earlier? Look at the puffy eyes. Oh, you're getting old. Oh, look at that chin. Oh, look at, right? And like, I needed to really break that cycle. And the first thing I did to break the cycle was to become aware of the cycle.
Yeah. As a sidebar, I just want to add to that. I had a similar thing with breaking the cycle last year, and I broke that by every morning having my Spotify playlist that I entitled Inner Mentor of Awesome. And
of course you did.
Of course. And I play it every morning, and it includes tracks like Every Little Thing Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. And so it was all about starting my day with that, like literally looking myself in the eye in the mirror and going, Jo, you're awesome. You rock. You look fantastic. Let's do this.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point around, the anchors, things that keep us anchored into a place of greater positivity, a place that keeps us anchored into the beliefs that we're working on instilling into us. And so thank you for that example. And then trust, right? Ask yourself, am I walking the talk? How you do one thing is how you do everything. Am I living by that little credo? Right? Like, am I honoring my boundaries? The boundaries that I say I have, this is famous. People really struggle with boundaries. We're going to really dive into that at some point as well, because I am a huge proponent of boundaries. I've been practicing boundaries thanks to my therapist since I was 17 years old.
That's a long time ago.
That was a long time ago, people, a long time ago. And yet, even those of us who set boundaries, because there's the people who don't establish the boundaries or recognize that they need a boundary, right? That happens. Usually we have a lot of blind spots around our boundaries, but then we set them and then we don't honor them. So, are you honoring your boundaries even if you have them? Are you honoring the commitments that you're making? Are you doing it when you say you're going to do it? And credibility, how are you really honing, building your credibility and maintaining your credibility? So those are really, that's the recap here. And what I would love for you to do, like always, is to head on over to the Facebook page, the Bold Leadership Revolution, and join in on the conversation. I would love to hear any insights or actions that you'll be taking from the content that we share here, because I don't want these podcasts to be more information. I don't want this to contribute to the cognitive overwhelm that we have in today's society. I really want these to be actionable and implementable and there for your transformation. And in order to do that, in every episode, we have a content download that is a note sheet that you can be jotting some things down, your insights, your ahas, your takeaways, and really using this information to create transformation as a leader.
Yeah. Guys, we want to hear what examples can you think of in your life, where the know, like, and trust factor has been really congruent or really incongruent. What have you taken away from today? So, find us on the Bold Leadership Revolution Facebook page. Let us know what you think. And we want to hear from you.
And we'll catch you on the next episode.
We will. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bold Leadership Revolution podcast. This episode has ended, but our work continues online. Head over to theboldleadershiprevolution.com, where you'll find links to any resources mentioned in today's episode, along with other valuable tips and information that will help you lead bold. That's theboldleadershiprevolution.com.